But we got to get to the SEC. It is Georgia at the top, number one team in the country. They're my pick to win the national championship. Obviously, completely chalk, but if they're the best team, they're the best team. I think they are. The only interesting thing, it's probably the toughest schedule Georgia's had in a really, really long time. They've been able to beat up on the SEC East for a long time. They now get Clemson out of conference this weekend, which I do think they'll win that game in Atlanta. But still a really tough week one game. And then like their first SEC game, they have to go to Kentucky. Like that's never easy. And then the next, they do get a bye before going to Alabama, but then they have to go to Alabama. They get Auburn. They have to go to Texas, Florida on a neutral. They have to go to Ole Miss. They get Tennessee at home, and then 2 easy games to end the. Although that Georgia Tech, after what we saw from Georgia Tech, maybe not an easy game to end the year, as easy as they thought it would be. So it is a tough schedule, but I still. Like, I think Tennessee will be good. I'm pretty high on Tennessee. I still don't think Tennessee's going to Georgia and winning that game. I still think they'll go to Ole Miss and win that game, even though Ole Miss is good. I think they'll go to Texas and win that game. So as tough as the schedule is, I still don't see them losing more than – I think maybe they lose one game between going to Alabama, Texas, and Ole Miss. Maybe they lose one of those 3. I don't see how they don't go to the SEC championship game. Even if they lose 2 games from there and somehow don't even make the SEC championship game, as a 10-win team, they're making the college football playoff. And once they're in, I still think they're the best team, top to bottom. We were talking about Will Howard. I was saying I think if you switch Carson Beck and Will Howard, then Ohio State is probably the best team in the country.
No, if
Georgia.
you switch Carson Beck and Will Howard, Ohio State's the greatest college football team ever.
Yeah, because I think that's Ohio State's. I think Ohio State's defense is arguably better than Georgia's. I mean, you're really splitting hairs. Probably the 2 best defenses in the country, but I think Georgia did a good job in the portal. They brought in Colby Young, wide receiver from Miami. They brought in Trevor Etienne at running back from Florida, who's just a monster. You lose Brock Bowers, but Oscar Delp is a really good tight end who's going to step into that role. He's not Brock Bowers, but nobody is. But Oscar Delp is a really good tight end.
He does look like they tried to replicate Brock Bowers.
Yeah, he looks very similar.
He's 6'6",
same build,
white, and has a lower number. But you are right. He just you see the difference. It was like I was watching tennis last night, and Sloane Stevenson was playing, and then Novak played against some bum. But the speed difference, you just see it. It's just so huge.
Yeah. But then on Carson Beck, I think Carson Beck is almost an underrated quarterback. I see PFF and all these different places put out their list of top 10 college quarterbacks, and Carson Beck is most of them number 1 on the list, as I think he should be. And all the replies are Carson Beck number 1, he's mid, everybody's saying mid.
That's Twitter culture though.
Yeah,
that's peak Twitter brain rot. Because they watched him play one game against Alabama last year and it didn't go perfectly. If the SEC officials actually ruled incomplete pass being incomplete, it's completely different.
Georgia probably wins the national championship.
Yeah,
if that's the case.
Yeah. And we're 100%.
We aren't watching the Connor Stallions doc today. The entire world is completely different if that one call is different for Georgia. But so I think Carson Beck is the best quarterback in the country. It's why I think Kirby Smart's the best coach in the country. I think they're a top 2 defense in the country, which is why I'm not picking anybody to beat them in the playoff format. I don't think there's any way they don't make the playoff. And I think in one game against Ohio State, I think quarterback's the difference. In one game against Oregon, I think defense and quarterback, they have an advantage looking at the other top teams. So I'm all in on them, but the SEC could get 4 or 5 playoff teams pretty easily. Georgia, Texas, Alabama, Ole Miss, All four of those teams, I think, are better than even odds to make the college football playoff. So that's four that are favored to make it, and then a fifth team from the group of LSU, Texas A&M, Tennessee, Missouri. One of those four teams, or maybe even two of those four teams, could get in. So Ebo, I'll go to you first with your SEC picks.
I'm with the chalk. I'm going chalk. I just think Georgia's just levels. There's levels, and they're just miles ahead of everyone else. In terms of just sort of like the cachet they have coming into the season, having Carson Beck back. I think Carson Beck is probably going to go 1-1. I think he probably should go 1-1 in the upcoming NFL draft. It's Georgia. There's just no, and there's a whole. I do think that people are kind of expecting Texas to come in and struggle with just like SEC physicality. I don't know if that's really going to be their issue. I don't know. I think they're talented enough to match up with SEC teams. I don't think that's an issue. Could they get burned in the back end like we saw in the college football playoff by good quarterbacks? Absolutely. But
great quarterback.
Yeah,
Michael Penix.
Maybe the best.
Top college quarterback of all time. Yeah.
Top 10 pick, Michael Penix. Ole Miss is dangerous, obviously. I mean, they got our guy Juice.
Formerly, he's not my guy anymore.
Yeah, he stabbed you guys in the back, and you can't stop tweeting at him. It's actually kind of sad.
He can't stop talking about us.
Do that.
You know that, right? He
and
keeps talking about us.
I think Tennessee at 15-1, you got to be at least a little bit intrigued by if you think they can make the championship game, and that line moves down to something that's like inside double digits, inside a touchdown. Because I mean, Nico could be the guy. He could be the best. Like Hendon Hooker and Joe Milton were not ready, or Josh Heupel had them. He just warming up for Nico, because I think Nico could light it up at Tennessee. So I think Tennessee's worth a look at 15-1, but I'm going chalk with Georgia.
Yeah, and I will say just really quick with Georgia, I don't think there's any point in betting them plus 190 to win the SEC. I think you might as well bet them at whatever plus 300 or whatever to win the national championship. Because like I said, they do have kind of a tough schedule. I still think that they will probably win the SEC, but I mean, we saw last year in one game, Alabama beats them in the SEC championship game. And this year, if they go into the SEC championship game undefeated, they know they're going to the playoff no matter what. Of course, they would like the number one seed because that gets you a bye. But I just think I trust them more in the playoff format of like, we're not going to lose than I do in an SEC championship game. So I think you might as well go with more value there. But Jack, I'll go to you and let's talk about, because I know you said you have some thoughts on Texas, and Ebo, you were saying about Texas. I think we need to talk about Quinn Ewers. I think some people think he's like the best quarterback in college football, or at least like top 2 or 3. I'm not in on Quinn Ewers. I think he's a very good college quarterback. I don't think he's one of the 3 best quarterbacks in the country this year. And that's with nationally, like, not as strong of a quarterback group, like not as strong as last year's quarterback group. I think in big games, like we saw in the game against Oklahoma last year that they lost, we saw it against Washington. He just like doesn't seem to have it in big games. Like he makes throws that somebody at his level should not be making in important spots. Like he misses really easy throws that he should be able to make. So Jack, I'll go to you on Texas thoughts and everything else with the SEC.
Yeah, Texas is a team that I don't know how good they'll be this year. And I think for them to get to the elite level of the SEC, I think Quinn Ewers needs to play much better than he's played his entire career. You mentioned a lot of really great points. I think he really needs to take a step up. And I don't know if it's going to happen. I think the class of this division is Georgia. They're also my national title pick. I think Missouri's a team that could be around, make the playoff. Ole Miss is interesting. Obviously, a lot of transfers. Jackson Dart, Lane Kiffin. Can they take that next step forward? And I also think there's a chance Alabama may just like really not drop off that much. This, as we know, this conference is just loaded. There's so many questions across the board. Even Texas A&M, what will Texas A&M be? Will they be a top 5 SEC team, or will they be a top 12? Florida, Arkansas. This conference is loaded, and there's a lot of questions, but I think the big question is answered. Georgia is the class of this division, and then we kind of have to sort out everybody beneath them. Texas, Bama, Ole Miss, Missouri, LSU. Oh, there's a lot of teams in this conference that think they're going to go 9-3, 10-2, but there's not enough wins to go around. Because I think even Texas A&M, maybe I think there's probably 8 teams in this conference that think they're going to go 9-3, 10-2. That's their expectation. And that's not going to happen because you just they play each other. And then we could spend 30 minutes on each team, but I think the team with the most upside that's kind of being underrated is Alabama. I really think DeBoer is just a genius, and Jalen Milroe is good enough. And even if he's not, Ty Simpson may be good enough.
I think the last couple of weeks, I've been starting to think Jalen Milroe's kind of been underrated a bit. I think he was really good by the end of last year, and I think Kalen DeBoer can unlock him. He was playing with Tommy Rees as his offensive coordinator, which all respect to Tommy Rees, but I don't think he is at the level of being an Alabama offensive coordinator. And now with Kalen DeBoer basically coaching him up, like we saw Michael Penix was the best quarterback in college football over the last 2 years, undisputed, greatest quarterback maybe in college football history. What Kalen DeBoer did with him was unbelievable, and now he has Jalen Milroe and all the weapons that comes with being at Alabama. I agree. I don't think they'll drop off very much. I don't think they're on Georgia's level, but they could easily be the second best team in the SEC. They probably are the second best team in the SEC. Their defense is still going to be really good. They lost some pieces, but they also brought in some really good pieces. I really like their DC hire. They brought in Kane Womack, who was the head coach of South Alabama, is a genius defensive coach. I think that was a really good hire. So I think Milroe can be really, really good under Kalen DeBoer. I think Ole Miss is kind of the same as we were saying about Penn State. I think they're a team that's cool, we can win 10 games and go to the playoff every year. They're not going to win the national championship. They're just not good enough on defense. I don't think I like Jackson Dart. I don't think he's good enough to be beating an Ohio State or an Oregon or a Georgia in a playoff game. But I think Ole Miss is good enough to win 10 games and make the playoff. I think Georgia, Alabama, and Ole Miss, I'm firmly putting into my playoff. I think Texas will still probably get in, although I agree. I'm kind of worried about Texas. I'm out on LSU. I still don't think they'll be good enough defensively, and the amount of weapons they lost on offense, I just don't think they'll be able to replace. And then I think Texas A&M and Tennessee, between those two teams, I could see either one of them, potentially both of them, making the playoff. We'll learn a lot about Texas A&M this weekend. They play Notre Dame. That's a huge game for both of those teams, but especially for Texas A&M, because Notre Dame can lose that game and still go win every other game on their schedule pretty much. Texas A&M really needs that win if they want to be a playoff team. I'm betting Texas A&M -2.5, partially for that reason. I think this game means a lot more to them. They also have it at home, obviously. But I agree on the upside on Texas A&M and Tennessee. I think Jimbo's massively held back Texas A&M the last few years. And I think Elko, perfect hire. Obviously, he's got the Texas A&M connections already, and I think he's an unreal head coach. and they have a head coach who's not going to be dabbling in their offense, messing with it like Jimbo did the last few years. I think Connor Wegman, his health is pretty much what it comes down to. He's had major injury problems in the past, but I think he can be really, really good if he's healthy. And so I like Texas A&M and Tennessee. Again, with Nico at Tennessee, if he hits, like, he's definitely the most talented of any quarterback Heupel's had, like you were saying, Ebo. But even this year with no experience, really, he's already closer to Hendon Hooker than he is to Joe Milton in terms of what he's going to be able to do this year. So I think they could be good right away. I mean, they played Georgia and Bama and at Oklahoma. Those are probably their 3 toughest games. If they can win one of those 3 games, probably at Oklahoma being that game, but could win at home against Alabama for sure. If they win one of those games, they're a 10-win team, and that probably gets you into the playoff from the SEC. So I did bet Tennessee to make the playoff at plus 170. I think, like I said, I think you could get 5 SEC teams into the playoff. If you win 10 wins from the SEC, you're probably in. And I think Tennessee's schedule sets up for them to win 10 games. So I like that bet. Brew McCoy coming back at wide receiver healthy for them is huge. They brought in the wide receiver from Tulane, who's really, really good. So in their defense, they have arguably the best player in college football, in James Pierce Jr. Their defensive end is insane, can take over an entire game. So yeah, I really like them. And like I said, with Texas A&M, they don't have to play Georgia, Ole Miss, or Alabama, and they get Missouri and Texas at home and Notre Dame at home. So I think if they win this game against Notre Dame, like, the Texas A&M hype train could really get rolling after this week. So that's kind of my general SEC thoughts. I will say, just on South Carolina for a minute, because I have to talk about South Carolina for a minute. It's really, like, tough timing, because I think this is the best defense that Shane Beamer's ever had at South Carolina, and by, like, a decent margin. They have a lot of NFL talent. Nick Emanwari and Jalen Kilgore are one of the best safety duos in the entire SEC. They brought in Kyle Kennard from Georgia Tech, who's a monster defensive end. Debo Williams was all SEC last year at linebacker. Tonka Hemingway is one of the best defensive tackles in the SEC. Like, their defense is actually loaded. And if they had, like, the Spencer Rattler, Juice Wells, Xavier Legette offense with this defense, they could actually be really, really good. But unfortunately, they're replacing basically their entire offense. Now going to have Lenore Sellers at quarterback wearing rec specs, which is just unbelievable that there's an SEC quarterback who's going to be wearing rec specs during a game.
Jack
yeah.
Jack
and
Mackay.
yeah, which is, I was pumped to see that. I haven't told anybody this yet. Obviously, I wear glasses. I have purchased rec specs, real prescription rec specs. They are on the way to my house, and I will be wearing them for every South Carolina game this year.
Wait, but why? Oh. Now that I was about to ask, this was such a dumb question from someone that is privileged. You know, my privilege almost came across here with my eyes. But I was going to ask, why pay for prescription? Well, you're going to wear them and you have to watch the game.
Yeah, I can't put glasses on under them.
Yeah,
not work, and I need to be able to watch. Yeah, so I had to get real ones. They were like $150 or something. But it's worth it to support my quarterback. But I think they did a good job bringing in Rocket Sanders from Arkansas at running back. He's one of the best running backs in the SEC, in the country, if he's healthy. So they're going to be super run heavy. Lenore Sellers is a run first quarterback. So it's going to be really interesting to see. It's going to be the opposite of basically the South Carolina team of the past couple of years, which is like Spencer Rattler's going to throw the ball like 50 times and try to beat somebody in a shootout. They're now going to be super run heavy, limit possessions. They're going to be pretty good defensively. Obviously, against their schedule, it's still going to be tough, but I think they could win 6 games and get to a bowl, which would be a a really good season for them with the schedule they have. So that's my South Carolina thoughts. But Jack, you, I guess you already said Georgia's your pick. Does anybody else have any SEC thoughts?
No, I mean, this is like I would just say, I mean, it's such a fascinating season across the board, not just in the SEC and all of college football. Obviously, we've never really seen the landscape with 12 teams. It feels like the thing about the new playoff is that it feels like more teams have a chance, but they really may not, because it essentially allows a Georgia to lose maybe even twice and then make it to the playoff. Like last year, Georgia probably would have beat Michigan, at least in my opinion. Now, that being said, we'll see how it all plays out, the fun of it and whatnot, but there's a lot of interesting teams, interesting players. The transfer portal's really changed the game. So yeah, like it's a fascinating season, and I'm excited for it. But I think Georgia reclaims the throne.
Yeah, I agree. I have Georgia winning it all again. I think they'll play Oregon or Ohio State, one of those two teams in the national championship, and whoever wins the Big Ten of those two teams, and we'll win. And Ebo, you said Georgia's your SEC pick? Are they your national champion pick as well?
Yeah, I'll probably take Georgia to win national championship. I'll slide into the college football playoff. I'll probably just go chalk with Georgia, Ohio State, and then take some flyers on my boys at K-State and try to hit a high upside with USC. So,
all right,
yeah, high upside plays for me, like Tennessee, high upside just from the quarterback perspective. I'm just looking at a few other schools that are just like a little bit more wide open in terms of a winner of it all. Like Kansas State, like Ebo said, USC. We didn't really talk a lot about Mizzou. I don't think they could really win it all. But I
think they have a great floor, but I don't see them as a national title contender.
I mean, we talked about Oklahoma State. If I told you could get a team into the college football playoff at 150-1 that is projected to be a favorite in 11 of their 12 games, I think you take that every time. And then, so yeah, I mean, and then outside of that, I'm just looking at the numbers right now.
Yeah, I mean, you can get
35-1. I mean, Michigan 35-1. I think Clemson 40-1. They have the talent to do it. Even Alabama 12-1 it just kind of feels gross. But yeah,
you can get Texas A&M 66-1. I think that's pretty wild considering they, like I said, their schedule breaks really well. If they beat Notre Dame this week, they could easily be on the path to the playoff. And if Connor Wegman's healthy, they probably have one of the best defenses in the country already. So I think that's good value there. In terms of the group of five, just to touch on that really quick, I bet Boise State plus 400 and Memphis plus 700 as my two teams to make the playoff. I'm basically fading Liberty. Liberty's schedule is a joke. Like the CUSA.
What happened? Did he go?
He muted his mic.
You're muted. How'd you mute yourself?
The mic unplugged. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
You still can't hear me?
Yeah, there you go. I can hear you now.
All right. My mic unplugged. I don't know. That was weird. I'm Conference USA is terrible, so I'm fading Liberty because I think if they lose one game, the committee will leave them out. They have to go to App State. I think that's probably the game that they lose.
If a 13-0 Liberty makes it over a 12-1 Boise State or like a 12-1 Mountain West or American champion, this is all a joke. It's a sham.
Yeah,
Jerry Falwell is lining the pockets of his ex-wife's boyfriend who's probably on the committee.
I think his ex-wife has like 3 boyfriends on the committee.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I mean, Liberty is a joke of a school. It's a joke of a program. CUSA is a joke of a conference. I agree. Even if they go undefeated, I think if Boise State or Memphis or any other teams from those conferences go 12-1, I think they get in over them. But I think if they lose a game at all, like I said, that they're 100% out. And Boise State, I really like in the Mountain West, although their QB situation now is kind of throwing me off a bit. But I think Memphis has the highest ceiling. I think if their defense can get better, I think they have the best offense in the group of 5 with Seth Hennigan, how good their offense is. So those are the 2 teams I like out of the group of 5. And we know Jack Mack loves Liberty. You looked upset when we were talking shit about Liberty.
I don't care about Liberty. Liberty's just like they're just going to go 12-0 for the remainder of college football. They're just going to be 12-0 forever and play nobody. And
which is why
we're going to have to like pretend that they're good.
We need to set the precedent this year by not letting them into the playoff and be like, start scheduling a couple of good out of conference opponents if you want to make. I think
they'll say it's like hateful towards or anti-evangelical. You think they'll kind of start that? And I could see, like, I could see Tucker.
I mean, we let Baylor in.
I could see Tucker.
Yeah, crusading for Liberty to get into the playoff.
Like doing a kind of a monologue saying, yet another evangelical hatred from the American public, and Liberty has been stripped of the chance to play. Who would they even play?
Yeah, I mean, and this is going to be
9-3 Tennessee. 9-3 Tennessee, who would beat them by like the spread would be, and then the spread for that game would come out and be 28.5.
Yeah, I mean,
I've never sprinted faster to a bowl game bet than when Oregon Liberty opened at like 20.
And it might be that matchup again. If it was, Oregon could easily be the 5 seed if Ohio State wins the Big Ten, and Oregon's the 5 seed, and it's Oregon Liberty again as the 5-12 matchup, and Oregon wins by 60.
And then, but it'll be great because like the Josh Pates of the world, myself, will be able to say like, "Are you happy? Is this what you wanted? Is this what you guys wanted?" But we will see.
And this is going to be like the final college football playoff bracket reveal. It's going to be like a month after the election. I think the election could have something to do with whether Liberty gets into the playoff or not.
No,
I think a Trump presidency
that would actually
sees Liberty get in.
Unbelievable if Trump gets involved in because I'd assume if you wanted a campus or university that is close to 100% in support of Trump, Liberty's up there.
Oh, it's number 1.
Easily
number 1.
Because like even the SEC schools have like liberal pockets.
Lots of New Jersey kids.
Yeah. And then like, but Liberty, he's valid out there. That's truly one of the most fascinating schools ever.
You got to make a trip to Lynchburg and just check it out. It is.
Well, it's a lot of my people. It's like a lot of people that like I would kind of, but the fact it has like, it's the most sneaky 60,000 person school of all time.
Yeah, it's not just that it's like a religious school. There's like way like 10 more levels. Like the jokes people make about like BYU, Liberty is way more strict than BYU in terms of like.
And BYU is like kind of in the mountains in the middle of nowhere. Not that many people go. It's. I mean, Mormonism is kind of like a few state religion, but Liberty is just this. I think it's because you learn about schools from their sports programs, and if people go there, if there's parties and whatnot. There's none of that at Liberty. That guy, who, like Swag God or whatever, the lacrosse player.
The Drip King
where he like poses as like he's like a not mentally, like a disabled person when he's like before God and then after God. He's like the number one. He calls himself the number one Christian athlete in the world. He transferred to Liberty to play lacrosse there.
I mean, it's a good pipeline.
It's so funny. His content shifted from like begging Livy Dunn to come back to him to just he's just like the face of evangelical lacrosse now.
Somebody has to be. I'm going to be parlaying Liberty to make the playoff with Trump to win the election. I think those are correlated, so I think that's a sharp parlay market if you can find it. But other than that, I guess we've kind of hit on everything. We all went completely chalk with Georgia as national champions. I'm probably going to put this out as 2 different parts since it went pretty long. But there's tons of futures in here. If you go through and listen to every conference, we gave out a ton of stuff. So hopefully this is really good info, and we'll get the brain trust back together before the college football playoff again this year. So thank you guys for coming on as always, and being a part of the show. First show back for football season. Make sure to follow everything these guys are doing. Listen to Mostly Sports with Ebo, Jack Mack on TikTok, and everything massive.
Jack Mack to a milli is imminent.
Yes, that's the goal.
Yep. Hopefully we'll get there. Maybe by 2 million, I'll get invited to the Chicago office. You never know, man. No, but yeah. Thanks for having us. We'll definitely, and then, I'm excited for the season. Of course, I'm not on Unnecessary Roughness this year. Still support that. Go and listen, whatnot. But obviously, Mostly Sports, but still will be very much involved in college football in terms of just like I'll be locked in, trying to make everything. Make some good plays this year. Last year, I had a monumental season last year. I was down as much as I think like 35 units. Made my way back to even. I think I profited on the season by the end, but this year I'm trying to not get into that predicament again. Obviously, that's never the goal, but we always gamble responsibly. So 35 units goes down. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah. Yeah, still listen to Unnecessary Roughness for Blutman, friend of the show. Listen to Mostly Sports, and maybe, now that I'm a DraftKings employee, as DraftKings partners, maybe Ebo will invite me and Jack Mack to watch college football with him one day, but probably not going to happen, but you never know.
I have the open invite, but it's like I've never, they'll send a fucking, accountant on, their second week to Chicago before they'll send me. An
open invite is not an invite. You need a regular.
I love everyone in Chicago. I think I have a high approval rating in Chicago, but who knows? It's just the system's always been against me. So but we're trying to find winners no matter what. That's our goal. And Mostly Sports is definitely one of my favorite shows out of Chicago. I mean, I guess I don't even. I have one show I don't like, but I can't really say it. But
do you want to reveal it on this show? Nobody watches the show.
Oh, no. You never know. It could become one big thing. But, Mostly Sports is awesome. The Yak's awesome. Macrodosing's awesome.
There you go. Nobody here is jealous of you.
That seems pretty cool with Nikki Smokes, Za, Rudy.
We're just supportive of you, Ebo. We're happy for you.
Yeah, I know. You guys are welcome to visit Jack McCarthy at the office whenever you guys want to go visit Jack McCarthy. You can do that.
Well, I do have to pay a visit to him.
As a rider, I also have to pay a different kind of visit to him. But that's a whole different conversation. Shout out Walking Bets. Watch Walking Bets.
Yeah, sure.
All right. We've been rambling on way too long. Thanks for listening, everybody. Talk to you next time.
See ya.